And I think that it's really important to understand that when you sort of incite the emotions of art versus commerce, you just have a better opportunity to succeed.
Hey guys, welcome back to yet another episode of EventSpeak with me, Big John, CEO of Beyond Experiential. For those of you that are tuning in for the first time, welcome. And for those of you that are coming back, we sincerely thank you and welcome you back. You know that we are in an interview show. We talk with folks from every aspect of the event industry. And today's guest, we're excited to welcome him because he's got quite a voice in the experiential world and is really a pretty impressive resume. And Sam has really kind of made his mark, in our opinion, on the experience brand marketing world. Sam Ewen is joining us today. He's the managing director of dotdotdash, but has done so much more that we're going to get into here in just a minute. But he's on the line now, and we are welcoming him to the format. Sam, thanks for joining us on EventSpeak today.
Happy to be here.
How's it going, man?
Going well, all things considered.
All things considered is right. You know, it's, you know, we've been talking about this on the show a lot, obviously these last few months. And I don't think ever in the history of event marketing has there ever been something like this where, you know, we were interrupted because of a pandemic. I don't think there's such a thing as planning for that when you're looking at your year ahead. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do, and let's start with that.
Sounds good. Well, as you mentioned, my name is Sam Ewen. I've been in the experiential world since the late 90s. I've been doing it quite a long time for a variety of agencies, both my own and others. And it's been a really interesting and sort of wild ride to get us to where we are today. But yeah, I mean, I was really early on into the idea that brands can sort of engage with their customers, especially in real spaces, in unique and different ways that are just more powerful than a lot of traditional advertising. And that's sort of what I've built my career on.
Absolutely. You know, when I first heard the term experiential, I was like, what? And, you know, someone quoted what I believe to be a Chinese proverb is where I'm taking this from, but I've also heard that Benjamin Franklin said it, but it says, if you tell me, I'll forget. If you show me, I may remember, but if you involve me, I'll never forget. And it's really created something so special, I think, for brands to have that kind of an interaction, that kind of an experience with their demo. Sam, you've been part of some of the most kick-ass experiential programs that just blow the sensories, in our opinion, here at EventSpeak. Talk to me about how art and creativity plays a role in how you tell a story about a brand.
So I think for myself, I'm always much more interested in what's going to drive me to be interested in something. But I'm also very comfortable putting myself in the shoes of who the sort of various customers I'm trying to reach are. So I think that thinking through that, the things that sort of make us really passionate are art, our music, our cinema, our architecture, physical spaces around us, magic, you know, stuff that sort of we can't explain always. And so my goal has always been, how do I sort of do my best to replicate that in a way that still feels organic and interesting, and sort of allows me to both connect the brand I'm working with to the customers, but in a way that feels comfortable, doesn't feel too forced, and also doesn't feel like I'm really selling them anything. I want people to have fun and have a great time. And I think that it's really important to understand that when you sort of incite the emotions of art versus commerce, you just have a better opportunity to succeed.
Very well said. You know, I like that, inciting art versus commerce, because, you know, I think the most programs that have made the biggest imprint on me, whether I was working on them or something I actually went to as a consumer, are those programs exactly that, where you don't really feel like there's a sales pitch. You're just having this experience. And if it's a program that's done correctly, you're going to walk away with that in your head. And you're going to remember that when that should come into play, whether it's, AT&T sponsoring something and you end up at a cell phone shop down the road, or, maybe a new beverage from a major soft drink company, whatever the case is. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, you began your career as the founder of Interference in 2001 in New York City.
Well, that wasn't me beginning my career. That was my first, as an entrepreneur, that was my first
entrepreneurial
role.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
But I'd spent a lot of time in the music industry, which is actually where I learned a lot about how to get people to communicate their passions. And then I was started in my agency life in about 1995 with some digital agencies, and then into kind of my first experiential roles, which were about 1997.
Well, okay. So let's talk about the music business a little bit, because music business is what I come from, even before we were talking off camera, folks, a little bit, because I had actually, I think through a mutual friend who was working with Sam at the time years ago, I had interviewed with him for a gig, and we started chatting and being friendly, and just recently reconnected on LinkedIn, and here we are today. But for myself, I was working in artist development and A&R, and radio. I mean, pretty much any gig I could get in music, I worked up until the early 2000s, when the whole thing just kind of flipped upside down. In what capacity of music were you working in? What was your experience in the industry?
Well, I started out on the sort of production and on the kind of creative side of it, but I also was really interested in the marketing piece. So I worked in both video and record promotion for a while. I also worked on the event side, putting on events. And so that was actually where I think I learned a lot of the sort of how I think through the work that I do now, which is sort of, the idea of, you have people who are lining up to go see an event and a concert or whatever it may be, you got to give them a show. And I think that's sort of where, for me, it was really interesting to think, okay, if I love something so much that I'm going to go and wait online and spend my money and then tell all my friends what an amazing experience it is, how can I recreate that for brands, services, in ways that, again, feel authentic to what they're trying to do? You don't want to be, you don't need to be public enemy when you're doing it. But you do need to think through what's the right sort of way to talk to this group in a way that just excites them, makes them really interested, and leave saying, hey, like, I had a good time with that.
Absolutely. That is something that people take with them. And it really, I feel like, it connects people. You're connecting people, you're connecting them with experiences. And then when there's a brand at the heart of that, that's something that people, it's lasting for them, I feel. And I think your advice on, you work with things that you're passionate about. It's kind of like Warren Buffett's advice of, like, only invest in things that you are passionate about and things that you know about. And I think that's really important. In my own experiences, I've tried to steer with passion. And by saying that, I try to steer with doing what I know versus to step outside that realm, because I feel like from the consumer standpoint, they'll know somebody that, maybe you're just out there doing because you needed the paycheck. You know what I mean?
Right.
In doing my research, you talk about one of your proudest events was a concert for the deaf community sponsored by 7-Up. Can you talk to me about how the program came about and how it worked? Apparently, attendees wore backpacks to feel the vibration of the music. Am I right there?
Right. Well, I mean, so that was a project with the last agency that I was with, called Fake Love. And the interesting thing with that was, when you think about 7-Up, you think about sort of like that category of brand, they're sponsoring everything they can find. They're spending millions and millions of dollars. And often what they do is they sort of focus primarily on, like, let's get a logo on something. Let's make sure we're on the ticket, and let's make sure we're, behind the stage, and we're here and there. And I think that what happens a lot in music sponsorship is the opportunity to leverage what you're doing. And when, and by leveraging what you're doing, thinking through to say, well, if I took these assets and I threw it through a creative layer, what could I do with that? And that to me is a really sort of interesting opportunity to think through. So for example, with the 7-Up partnership, this was an existing relationship that 7-Up had with a known and sort of very popular DJ, Martin Garrix. And it turns out Martin Garrix had a very popular following within the deaf community because his music is so bass heavy. You can feel it. And so the insight there was, well, if you could do that, what then would you do? How could you sort of enhance that? What would it mean to create a nightclub for people who don't hear traditionally? And so utilizing technology, creative UX, working with the artists, and also working with the community itself, the idea sprung out to create a nightclub for the deaf, all around a music festival, that allowed people to hear in different ways. And so yes, they wore haptic backpacks that pulsed the music through their chests. There were platforms on the ground that you could stand on that would amplify the bass tones, so you could feel it through your legs. You could visualize the music as it was being played through speakers that had water on them, where you actually would see the sound waves.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's
and
awesome.
then, and you could feel speakers, and, so you started to think, turning a concert into something tactile started to become an interesting insight. And I think that way of thinking is how you sort of break molds around, oh, let's throw another thing like we've been throwing for years and years, and make more sort of opportunity out of the investment we're already making.
Absolutely. That's fascinating. And what a gratifying thing I would think to do. I'm sure even for those folks, when they became aware of the fact that there was a concert that they could attend, that they would be able to have an experience, which is, I could only imagine for someone that isn't able to hear traditionally, it has to be a major thing. Like what a thing to take away with you. That's really incredible. Now I'm curious, so you're currently the managing director at dotdotdash. Tell me a little bit about what you guys do and, we're doing prior to COVID, of course, and what that looks like.
So, what I really like about dotdotdash is we're a very innovative, focused studio. So we really look at how do you sort of marry physical space, content, and technology, and how do you utilize that in ways that still are about emotional connection, still about driving interest. And so our focus is when you sort of blend that stuff together, when you kind of get a little bit more agnostic about the venue, if you will, right? Like this doesn't have to be a party. Yes, we've done a lot of stuff at CES or at South by Southwest or, those types of venues. But, when you start to look at corporate campuses, retail spaces, just the world around us, and how would you activate that utilizing this sort of very exciting tool set? It sort of gives you an opportunity to rethink your canvas, and working with people who are so good at the innovation side, hardware, software, design, digital UX, physical UX, just allows us to then be able to sort of reimagine these worlds in ways that I think sort of just dramatically change that conversation about what we sort of think about when we think about brands and we think about that engagement layer. It's just not simple in terms of how do you get someone to give a like or a social share. It's more like how do I get someone to truly like, how do I get someone to come back?
Absolutely. And I think that's probably something we're going to be seeing more and more now, as of course everybody's pushing digital. And right. I think that as we venture into 2021 and we see the event industry slowly start coming back to life, hopefully once there's a vaccine widely distributed, and we can see an semblance of what we relate for festivals or special events, or obviously brand marketing and special events from music especially. We really see a lot of those partnerships more and more, and brand marketing becoming an exposure vehicle for artists and vice versa. So I'm curious, as you're a contributing editor to many well-known publications where you offer your opinion on a wide range of topics within our industry, where's your head right now with how you think events will look in the future? What do you think leading contributor to how these things will be shaped is going to be?
Well, I sort of I bristle a little bit when people talk about sort of going back to normal. Because I don't think that's realistic. I don't think we're going to go back to normal. I think that you use these moments in time, whether it was the dot-com crash, in the 1999, 2000, whether it was 9/11, and you say, now what can I create out of this that changes the direction and the approach that I would take. So for example, I've spoken a lot about live streaming and that we sort of burst the seal, if you will, on live streaming with what's happened with COVID, and that people now are so much more comfortable watching things, content, or just interaction and conversation across digital screens. Why would you ever do an event that doesn't allow the opportunity for people to experience something like that again? So that's one area that I'm very, very interested in, which is how do you think through your content delivery and your experience delivery? There's still going to be nothing that's going to replace being able to be in a room with someone and feeling their energy and having an amazing conversation and networking. I mean, that's pretty much going to happen still, I think, in physical spaces. But I think the ways that people will get the content out of it, I think the ways that you'll shoot it and create your own content from experiences and events, and the ways that you can leverage live audiences, I think that's an opportunity only. That's not something that I'm worried about, oh, is this going to replace this? No, because the people who want to go to South by will still want to go to South by. But if I can bring someone into my brand experience in a really cohesive and interesting way and sort of promote that I'm thinking that the person who can't afford to come can still have a great experience, that's amazing. So that's one area I'm super excited about. Other areas I'm very interested in are how we're going to think through physical comfort. And I think that's one where, something I've been pretty interested and fascinated by and done a bit in my career is the idea of free ticketed events. Because the beauty of a free ticketed event, especially when you time part it, is that you could really control your capacity in a way so that you can have the best experience possible and still get a fair amount of traffic flow through it, right? So if you think about, there was this amazing and sometimes frustrating rise of these Instagram museum experiences that have popped up over the last 3 or 4 years. The worst part of going to any of those was the other people who were there. Because you saw this amazing photo on Instagram that you wanted to replicate, and suddenly there's 15 people and you're trying to get a shot in a corner where no one's around and there's not a shadow because someone else is blocking the light and this and that. But if I can say I can bring 50 people in every 15 minutes and be open for 10 hours, and still then be able to get 2,000 people through my event in one day, but give them a much more controlled and sort of a much more curated experience, there's a power to that. Plus, think of the exclusivity that you create. You're not making people pay, but, oh, I got in. What happens with that waiting list? Oh, hey guys, we decided to open up for 2 more days. There's an opportunity for a specialty. And then you think through it in the end, okay, not only that, I also documented it as if I was taking that journey, and maybe that's in VR or AR these days. So sort of rethinking it through a way of better consumption of the experience or event, I think is something that we're going to see in retail. I think it's going to be something we see in corporate experiences, and certainly that we're going to see in live experiences.
I couldn't agree with you more, Sam. I feel like there are a lot of people that are talking about back to normal, what I refer to as BC, before Corona. And that's just not a realistic opinion. I think we're going to see a familiar landscape, but it's more about how digital, I think, is going to handshake with live events once we're able to do that again. And I've talked about this a lot on the show, that I feel like there are definitely benefits that come with the digital event. And what you were just saying, where you've got a bunch of people and you're trying to, block a shot and you can't because, there's all these folks running around doing what people do. From the digital capacity, like you get a much more controlled experience. Like you can almost control the narrative even more so for that experience from the consumer perspective, which I think is something that the best innovation is going to lead to really remarkable experiences as we move forward, and then it's great because we're going to see the traditional aspects of events come back, and you add an artist to that, or you add some sort of some innovation at whether it's South by or Comic-Con or whatever the case is. It's like, you're absolutely right. I mean, I feel like if we've learned anything, that there's a huge demand for those festivals. And I think next year we're going to see, whenever that time comes, when we are officially on the other side of this pandemic, I think we are going to see the event industry come back with a vengeance, if you will. I think it's almost maybe a bottleneck of some sort, because everybody's going to be trying to do something, and everyone's going to want to do something that really makes an impression. And in conclusion, I feel like those people and those producers and those agencies that take the digital component of it as well as the live component of it and meld them together, I think are going to be the most successful. But Sam, listen, I really appreciate you coming by the show and talking with us today. We follow a lot of different threads of yours, and we read your stuff, and we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us. You could find Sam at his website at Sam Ewen, that's SAMEWEN.com. And please, Sam, you're always welcome to come back and consider us a partner and a mouthpiece if you ever should need more of one that you already have. But thanks for coming by today, man.
John, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Sam Ewen, everybody. I am, of course, still Big John. This is EventSpeak on www.eventspeak.com. Remember, more than anything, guys, it's a free account to create. We are doing this because we want the event industry to be connected and have solidarity through dialogue. We are all in the same boat. Everyone's trying to figure out what is next. And the way we see it is the more that we can connect people, that you have a bunch of minds working on something as opposed to just feeling isolated on your own. You don't have to do that here. And, as opposed to even the social platforms where, they're just overfilled with so many different folks, EventSpeak is something that is just for you event people out there. So this is Big John reminding you guys to please take care of yourselves and each other, and we'll see you next time.